on Fox 5 News.
Good morning, America. I'm Taylor Alexander, and welcome to News 5.
And I'm your co-host, Kelsey Ledgeway.
This morning, we're going to start off with I would like to inform you our regularly scheduled morning broadcast has been canceled due to some breaking news. Sakir Al-Tafai, senior al-Qaeda leader, has just been killed. Al-Tafai was the second highest leader in Afghanistan and was responsible for directing personal attacks against coalition Afghan forces. The ISAF killed Sakir Al-Tafai and another al-Qaeda member with a precision airstrike. Fortunately, no other civilians were harmed.
So we usually defer to the president in foreign affairs. The public is largely uninformed on what is going on in Afghanistan. Obama does not turn a public opinion for foreign policy, but a lead opinion.
In 1979, America assisted Afghanistan against the Soviet invasion. In the 1990s, the Soviets left Afghanistan, leaving them lawless. We actually originally supported the Taliban because they countered warlords and there was finally order.
The U.S. became wary of the Taliban after hearing reports on the repression of women and other violations of human rights. Bin Laden was founded the Al-Qaeda, an extremist terrorist organization, and they set up training camps in Afghanistan to plan the attacks of 9/11.
On September 18, 2001, Bush signed a joint resolution authorizing force against those responsible for the attacks. This included fighting the Taliban. The Taliban is an Islamist extremist group, different than Al-Qaeda, but they work together because they have similar goals.
On October 7, 2001, America began bombing Taliban forces, officially launching Operation Enduring Freedom, or the War on Afghanistan. There was no formal Senate declaration of war, but the 9/11 Resolution Act authorizing force against those responsible for the attack gave Bush congressional permission. Otherwise, for Bush to send troops without congressional permission, he must act under the War Powers Act of 1973, which states he must notify Congress within 48 hours and send troops for a maximum of 60 days. The early phase of the war mostly involved U.S. bombings on the Al-Qaeda and Taliban forces, and the only combat between the Taliban and its Afghan opponents.
The Taliban collapsed in December of 2001. The Al-Qaeda leaders continue to hide. Later that month, America tracked Osama bin Laden to the Tora Bora cave southeast of Kabul, but unfortunately he escaped.
One major goal of the war is to create a democracy in Afghanistan. There was a shift in focus from the worldview of containment, which is to contain aggressive nations, to the focus on the reconstruction of Afghanistan. This demonstrates a worldview of human rights, which is the idea that the U.S. should act and enhance the rights of people living in other countries. On October 29, 2004, Osama bin Laden releases a video in which he takes responsibility for the 9/11 attacks and taunts the Bush administration. On May 23, of 2005, President Karzai and Bush signed a joint declaration stating the U.S. help Afghanistan to be secure, democratic, and to prosper.
To wind down the war, February 17th of 2009, new President Obama announces a plan to send 17,000 more troops to Afghanistan and claims that America will draw down the combat forces by the end of 2011. He announces another plan March 17th, 2009, claiming the only way of success in Afghanistan is dismantling the Al-Qaeda's safe haven in Pakistan. This involves sending over 4,000 more troops.
Obama increases the troops by 30,000 and declared that there will be a troop drawdown in July of 2011. In November of 2010, NATO members signed a declaration handing over responsibility of Afghanistan in the hands of Afghan forces by the end of 2014.
On May 1st, 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed by U.S. forces in Pakistan. In January of 2012, the Taliban proposes an idea to open an office in Qatar, a move towards peace. But 2 months later, in February, the Taliban suspends these talks, accusing the U.S. of not keeping promises of a prisoner swap. This past February, U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta announces the plan to end combat as soon as 2013 and shift security assistance in Afghanistan. President Karzai demands the U.S. military stay confined to military bases, which is a step closer from NATO to Afghan control. This gets us up to date with this Sakir Al-Tafai attack. Here in the studio with us today, we have our reporter, Vita Branco, and she has a very special guest.
Good morning, America. My name is Vita Branco, and I'm here today with our International Security Specialist, Bruce Alexander. So, Bruce, how long has the U.S. been at war with Afghanistan?
Well, we've been there approximately 11 years since immediately following the events of September 11th.
Right, and till this day we have not yet declared a war, correct? Because of the President's executive order.
That's correct. Only Congress can declare war. However, the President, in his capacity as Commander-in-Chief, can order troops to combat for a limited period under the War Powers Act. And after that period is over, then the President will return to Congress and ask for extensions of his War Powers Act, or he'll submit extensions based on that.
And how did the war in Afghanistan with the U.S. begin?
It began as a result, again, of the 9/11 events. A large part of the events of 9/11, the plotters for that were trained in Afghanistan. They had safe havens there, they had camps there, they had a lot of support there, they did recruiting there. And once it was identified that they were responsible, support also coming from the Taliban, who were in power at that time, the United States decided to act against Afghanistan, and principally the Taliban.
Right. And lately we've been hearing a lot about the Obama doctrine. Could you maybe elaborate on that?
Sure. The Obama doctrine has several components. Among those components are Obama tends to want to act more in concert with other countries. The other thing is President Obama was opposed to our involvement in Iraq, so consequently he structured his doctrine on our being involved in Afghanistan, what he called surging a lot of troops into Afghanistan to support the government that had been elected after the fall of the Taliban, and he preferred to concentrate on attacking al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and minimizing the expenses involved, and also, once the government was installed, to withdraw as quickly as possible.
And how is the Obama doctrine different from the Bush doctrine?
Well, President Bush's doctrine was to pursue terrorists anywhere in the world that were engaged in actively either supporting or conducting terrorist activities against the United States. President Bush's doctrine was based on the right to act unilaterally, meaning without consultation or in concert with any other country. President Obama differs in the sense that he prefers to use more of a coalition-based approach.
Right. And what has the U.S. achieved in these long 11 years?
Well, we've achieved quite a lot in Afghanistan. First off, we've been successful in defeating both Taliban and al-Qaeda. We've enabled the institution of a government that was elected. We've also increased the human rights in Afghanistan, and we've stabilized a large portion of the country, but not all of it, so that ordinary Afghanis can enjoy that democracy and freedom that they did not have under the Taliban.
And do you by any chance know the cost of this war?
The cost has been estimated at approximately $640 billion. Over the course of the 11 years. That's been primarily the cost of combat operations for the Department of Defense, but also we've had foreign aid and assistance to them as well.
Wow. And what is NATO, and why does it matter?
NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Why does it matter? Well, NATO was an organization that was formed out of Europe with the United States in the lead. Their doctrine was to defend Europe against the Russian invasion, potential Russian invasion. But since that threat went away, they now seek to defend and protect on their flanks in other countries that are deemed to have an interest to the security and stability of Europe.
In these last 11 years, we've seen two different presidents. Could you maybe explain how public opinion is affected during a time of war?
And public opinion plays a tremendous part in the conduct of any war, not just the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan. Public opinion was instrumental in the war in Vietnam and other places. Basically, the public opinion is oftentimes divided along political ideologies. Sometimes, but not always, sometimes you have the Republican Party wanting to take a more stance that's called hawkish, meaning more strong and more defense-oriented, whereas you might have members of the Democratic Party that might want to take more of a stance that relies less on military and more on maybe engaging through democracy or foreign aid. Nonetheless, both groups try to get political opinion on their side to determine how the war should be fought.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alexander, and back to you, Kelsey and Taylor.
Well, that wraps up our show, America, and as we leave, ponder this.
Is it possible to end the war in Afghanistan if the war has never been declared? Have a safe and wonderful weekend.